Welcome to Made for Mondays, the source for digging a little deeper into the Believers Church Sunday messages and finding ways to apply them to our daily lives. Together, let's take a deeper look and find a way to bring Mondays back to life.
Good morning, Made for Mondays.
Oh, brother.
Good morning, Jay.
How's it going, guys?
Samuel, how are you?
Good. I'm hosting today.
It's going good.
It's going to be
Sam's ready.
awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be, I think it's going to be a train wreck.
Yes, absolutely.
There you go.
Number one. So you're going to want to tune in. And the great thing about tuning in now is you can listen on Spotify or
Of course you can.
Apple Music,
Yep.
anywhere you can find your podcast.
Yep.
But we also last week started our YouTube channel. Well, not our channel, but our part of our channel.
There you go.
Where you can watch us.
You can see the
Riveting.
reactions.
Man, oh day.
Riveting.
Who does not want to watch us?
I don't understand why anyone would.
Yeah.
And we have to get the stats on the streaming versus
We will.
watching,
Podcasts.
but the views on the podcast last week were more than double what they were for the sermon.
Yeah, so we're going to...
Oh, wow.
Well,
That's interesting.
that is interesting.
Right?
I don't want you to feel any kind of way towards that either.
I don't.
Okay, good.
Because I figure people who are here don't
Yeah.
watch the sermon,
Yes,
but then they'll watch the podcast.
for sure.
I mean, that makes sense, right?
Yeah, it's... I'm trying... Jeremy was telling me last week, so our numbers did go up big time on our YouTube. But maybe it was just a 1 week thing. People saw the video, they're like, "Oh, I'll check it out
Yeah.
one time." So we'll check it out in the next
Yeah.
couple weeks to see
how it
how
goes.
that stuff's
Yeah,
bouncing
maybe
out.
after they watch one, they never watch another one.
Yeah, I think the listens went down a little bit, but the views were way higher than
Yeah.
our listens normally. So we've been having great months, and this is fun.
Yeah. We got to get this thing boosted enough that we can monetize it.
Yeah, where are we going?
That's what I'm.
That's what we
the
do
whole,
around here.
That's the whole
That's
game.
the goal.
Yeah, that's what we do.
the whole goal.
That's why
gotta
we
get
started this.
Sponsors,
All right.
advertising.
No, please
There you
don't
go.
comment on this. We're joking, everybody.
No,
But,
I'm
no,
I'm
we'll
not
still
really,
do it.
I'm not really joking. I would love that.
Okay, never mind.
I think it's a great
this
idea.
is serious. Write your comments in.
There we go.
That's where we're at.
Yep.
Hey, listen.
Good,
So we've got people all over staff this week. They're going down south. They're going up
Yeah.
north.
So I pulled into the parking lot this morning, and all of the cars were on the right side as I'm coming in, and I'm
Yeah.
like, "Did I miss something on Teams? Are we not
Right.
supposed to park next to the building?" I literally stopped in the parking lot, opened up Teams. I'm
Oh,
like,
funny.
"No, everyone, there's nothing there." And then it occurred to me, everyone is traveling.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
everyone who's out of town park their car on one side.
We're just smart.
Super smart.
I mean, that's respectful too for us
Thanks.
that are still here.
Thank you to all of
Yeah.
you
Thanks, staff.
who are parked on the other side.
Jeremy, I'm not sure we can top your week last week, or
Yeah.
even your weekend
Oh,
with,
yeah,
with the
that's-
new baby and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
how'd y'all's weekends go? Anything fun? Anything exciting? New restaurants?
No new restaurants for
No new
me.
restaurants.
So I did a bunch of yard work, and I hate yard work.
Yeah.
So weeding, putting down weed control stuff, I just despise it. There's nothing about it that I really like. So
Do you like when you're done with it?
yeah,
There you go.
I like when I'm not doing it anymore.
You figured it out.
Yeah.
There you go.
So that was my weekend. It was mostly just work kind of stuff. But on Thursday, it's like always about Derek, right?
Yeah. Honestly, it is.
Seriously. First he has a kid, and then it was his birthday. So his birthday was on Thursday.
Brother.
Oh,
So we
geez,
went
this
over there
guy.
and took dinner to him, and we did Samurai.
How old is he now?
30 years old,
Holy
Oh, wow.
smokes.
He's there. Okay.
my
All right, Derek.
son,
Your son, your kid.
my firstborn.
Imagine how old that makes you.
Right.
My goodness.
I was 25 when he was born. Do the math. That's
you
how
go.
old I am.
I can't.
Yeah, I know you can't. 55.
Someone to write it down.
Put it on the screen.
Yeah.
Tyler?
But for me, I went
Yeah.
home, saw my parents.
Oh, you did?
Mm-hmm. My dad retired 3 weeks ago.
Oh, awesome. Congratulations, Dad.
Congratulations, Dad. I missed the party. So
What
I went to
did,
go
what did he
that.
do?
He
What
was
did he
a-
retire from?
So he was a Mercedes-Benz technician,
Okay.
but he's a contractor as well. So he's built a couple homes and had us as free labor to do some of those homes.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
My brother and I.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so went down there to celebrate with him, and
Nice.
it was a really good weekend.
Good.
It actually
great.
was. Yeah,
And your wife's coming back into town, right? Soon.
she is Saturday
This week.
Yes. So y'all, Murphy's alive.
Do you
I'm
wanna-
alive.
Well,
House
let
is
the
up.
audience know she didn't leave you.
Oh, she did not. My bad. She is in the military. She's on a TDY, temporary duty in Alabama, doing some work
so she's
down there.
coming back.
So you
coming
gotta
back.
straighten up the house.
No, it's actually I did that last night.
Okay, good.
So we're looking pretty
Smart.
good. I'll
Yeah.
try to
Plan ahead.
maintain it for a week.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
That's
Like,
awesome.
You have
Yeah.
you have a big like welcome home kind of thing. You
I'm getting that
got
together.
A banner, balloons.
Yeah.
I'm working on. I didn't think to do any of
a
that.
date night.
Yeah,
you
cook
know?
some dinner or plan something.
Yeah.
I need to do all those things.
There's a
That's
lot of
what's gonna be on the
pressure, yeah,
pressure. It's
yeah.
the pressure's mountain, man. And our anniversary is in 2.5 weeks, May 16th.
And that's
From there.
what year?
Two.
2
Year
years.
two. 2 year marriage.
That's a huge one. That I don't want to
Is
put
that huge?
additional. Yeah, I don't want to put additional
Oh,
pressure on you.
gosh.
But
Yeah,
if you don't
I'm already
have,
struggling.
if you don't have something really big planned for year number 2,
You're in trouble.
I'm in trouble.
you're in big trouble.
I'm working on it. I'm gonna,
Well,
I'm
let
getting
us
there.
know if you need any help.
Yeah.
I will probably ask your wives.
That's a
about
great.
that.
That's
I
what
don't
I was going to
Oh,
say.
man.
Yes.
You're gonna bypass us and
Don't
go
ask
right to the wives.
us. I think
wow.
so.
Again,
That's
another smart move.
a very
honestly.
smart move.
Yeah, that's
You
what
can
I
tell
would
this
do.
guy's got a lot of education.
Yes.
You can't fool him.
Nope.
You
I,
look great.
I had a pretty chill weekend, but Thursday night we had Believers softball team. This is men's softball. We had practice on Thursday night.
So,
I didn't get it. Jamie, did you get an invite to that?
oh heck no.
Well,
I didn't get it. I'm
true,
kinda,
true story. There was something posted on social
Yeah.
about a softball game,
Yes.
Believer softball game,
Last Thursday,
and a
or
couple
2
people
Thursdays ago.
posted. It was the first game of the
correct.
season, right?
Yes.
And a couple people posted underneath that. I didn't know Believers had a softball team,
Right.
and they were like offended that
Uniforms and everything.
they're a part of Believers Church, but they didn't know about the Believer
team.
softball
The
team.
team.
Yes.
And I posted under there. Until today, I didn't know we had a team either.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
so there's apparently a lot of things that go on around here that I have no clue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just a little bit. We don't need to spend a lot of time on the Believers men's softball team. However, we used to have like 3 teams.
I know we did.
We had a ton.
I remember that.
So we've had 2 guys at the church that wanted to try to maybe see if there was still some interest.
okay.
So they did not a select few, but they put out just a little
Couple feelers here
casual
and there.
feelers, see if
Yeah.
anybody did, and they were able to field a team.
Right.
But now, since they've fielded a team, some pictures have went up. Now there's other people like, I'd love to be part of that. So
Yeah.
I think this was like getting the team back together.
So this was a beta year.
Yes, yes, because
Okay.
it used to be a really big deal, and
Yeah.
and honestly, it gets it gets guys connected, which
Yeah.
is kind of tough to do for church.
It is true.
So we didn't have a game last Thursday. They had a game, they lost both, but we also played Zach Rutherford's team. And
Yeah.
if you don't know who that is, he was a professional baseball player.
yeah,
so
that's
Oh,
kind
he
of
shouldn't be allowed to
he
play.
was on
that's
the other
kind of
team.
cheating.
That
I
is a little
agree.
bit.
Yeah.
He is
that's not-
retired, however.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It just wasn't fair.
Yeah.
So, anyways, the following week, the next Thursday, we already had a bye week. So it's going to be a long rest of the season because there's no more byes. We went out and practiced. First time I played softball in about 6 years. I felt great. Felt great.
Uh-huh.
The next day, I was like, I'm going to be really sore. I wasn't.
Wow.
I was like,
It must be you were just like
I started getting on the computer looking up pro softball teams. When are tryouts?
Yeah.
Just trying to find these things.
Right.
I wake up Saturday morning.
Are you
There it is.
very sore?
Oh,
There
okay.
it is.
I thought you were
Extremely
getting ready
sore.
to announce that
Second
you're
day.
going pro and leaving Believers.
Yeah, I'm out of I thought so after Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah. After Thursday's practice and then Friday feeling great.
Yeah.
I was like, me and Jamie, we sat down, we had prayer. I was like, is
Open
God
hands.
calling me to something else?
Yeah.
I don't want to close any doors.
Right.
But I will let God close the doors.
And he
So
did.
Saturday,
Yeah,
he
Saturday morning,
closed the
slammed
door.
Close the door.
Slammed them shut. It was over. So yeah, I'm
Well, that was close.
I didn't know I had shin splints. Those hurt. My back.
Your
I'm like,
back.
why is my back hurt? playing
Shoulders,
softball?
maybe.
It was okay, but
Okay.
yeah, Saturday Mason wanted to throw the football around. We went out in the yard, and I was like, "Ah!" Every throw. He's like, Dad, why are you crying? I was like, "Shh, don't worry about it, son. But yeah, that was my weekend. But other than that, it was a great weekend. Beautiful.
You're
It
here.
was beautiful. Oh, I
Yes.
went to a Tides game.
Oh, fun.
That,
Oh,
that,
nice.
after 5 innings got rained out.
Oh, that was Saturday.
That was Saturday,
Yes.
but it was really fun. So it was a graduation party for Lauren Bailey,
Yes.
who
for her
now has her
master's.
master's degree. Very highly educated,
Yes.
super intelligent, smart,
Very.
and we gathered with some friends over there. Super fun, and then it started raining. And the good news is Tides were winning And because they didn't complete the game, that ticket that I got for free, I can use again in the month of May.
Oh, wow.
So I'm going to go to another game.
I love
There you
that.
go.
Yeah.
The last Tides game I went to, it was 146 degrees, and we sat in the sun. It's so hot.
Yeah.
I don't know why I always
Amazing.
wait to go to those. So I'm guessing right now is a great time to go.
be
See
great.
it.
It really was nice.
And the tide is in. That's what they say
Tide
in
is-
the stadium.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
The tide is in. That's when they're having home games. They have a sign up and everything.
That's
Nice.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Well, that's fun.
Yeah.
Saturday, Mason had flag football, and we it was at 3:30, and that's when the storm started. And so it would rain, so everybody run to their cars, and then we'd run back on
Run
the
back
field,
out.
run back to the cars, run back on the field. So that was
Yeah.
fun though.
Yeah.
Does Mason like that better or basketball?
He's loving flag football right now.
Okay.
He's a little better at flag football, so I think that's why he likes it.
Gotcha.
I don't
No
think he
worries.
made a basket this year in basketball. He shot a lot.
He shot.
which is like his dad.
Oh. He did shoot a lot.
Yeah,
And
got
he
some
did.
shots.
he
good.
got close.
He did.
He had a couple
Sometimes.
scrimmages. He scored some in,
Yeah,
but
that was
not
good.
ever in the real game. But
That's all right.
me and Tyler coached. You
Yeah.
know that. I think we've told everybody that.
I think
Well,
we definitely have
we've
talked
covered
about
it,
that.
yes.
I believe so.
It was a great season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me being the assistant to the
To
head
the,
coach.
to the
Yes.
head coach, yeah.
It was really funny
Don't,
because
don't forget it.
we had a team party at our house, and this was like several months ago.
Yeah.
And I thought one of the kids left their sweatshirts, and it'd been sitting on our chair, like in the corner of our chair in the living room, and we just had it. I was like, man, I got to get that back to one of the kids. I finally picked it up, and it's like an extra large Ravens pullover, and I was like, oh, Tyler.
Taking my claim.
Tyler left his shirt,
Got a
his-
Browns fan
his sweatshirt.
home.
Yeah, I didn't like that. But anyways, okay, cool, good. I'm glad you guys had good weekends.
Yeah.
Hopefully relaxing. Hope everybody else did that's listening. So hey, we're doing Bible reading challenge.
Are you going to sing the jingle?
There's a jingle?
There is.
And no,
Damn.
listen. One, I don't remember the jingle because if Heather's sang it, I'm just trying to forget it. But we've been as a church
Yes.
reading through the Bible this year.
We have.
Awesome. So we have a question that came in, and this one is not from Derek Stewart,
It's not.
which is
It's from Brett Hall.
pretty shocking. Yes, Brett Hall.
And Brett, I just want to say sorry that it took us. He sent this in about a month ago, but he sent it in not through the proper channels. And I don't want to call anybody out
Wow. Brett,
for not following the
Let him know.
rules.
Let him know.
But there
But
are
there's
rules.
consequences.
There are rules for this. And
Yes.
so you emailed it. I don't remember now. I think you emailed it to me and I forwarded it to Heather. And because it didn't go to Made for Mondays
Yep.
at believerschurch.org,
There you go. Good.
it
plug.
got lost. That was a good plug.
Yeah.
It got lost in the shuffle of emails. And Brett,
That's on Brett.
it is on Brett. And here's the other thing, Brett, just to, again, I don't want to make a big deal out
No,
of
this is not about Brett.
It's not really. It could be anyone who
be.
doesn't
It could
follow
have
the
been anybody.
directions. Yeah. So I woke up like in the middle of the night one time. I was like, huh, there's a question that I haven't answered.
Oh, I thought it was you saw him on the news, and you were like, "Oh, we
No.
didn't
No, we
answer
didn't.
his question."
Now, I don't want to tell him this, but I don't watch local news.
Yeah.
So
Listen, if you're listening, support your local news channels,
you
please.
should. Yeah.
There you go.
Don't be like Pastor Jamie.
Don't
please.
be like me.
But anyways, Brett asked this question, and you guys can give an answer to it because it is a good question.
It's a great question.
So he said, "Hey, I'm not Derek Stewart, but I want to know why when Jesus performs miracles in the book of Mark specifically, he tells the people not to tell anyone." He said, "I thought Jesus wanted people to spread the good news."
Yeah. Not keep it quiet.
Correct. So two biblical scholars over here.
Oh, well, there's
How about
only
that?
there's actually only one biblical scholar over here, and it's Tyler.
Okay.
So this
please.
this guy's got his MDiv.
I know.
I've just got a bachelor's degree. He's got almost twice as much college under his belt than I do.
Yeah, that's
And-
a lot of pressure, Tyler.
And I went to
A lot of
college
pressure.
forever ago. I don't remember what I had for dinner last night, let alone
Yeah,
what
listen.
I learned in college.
And the thing is, Tyler has got all those degrees, but
Yes.
I think I've went to school longer than him.
Oh, 100% of the three of us here. So Tyler, you have what? MDiv is 3-year degree, right?
It could be 5. I did it in 3 because I wanted to get out of there.
Okay.
Oh, of course you did.
So you have your bachelor's in 4 and then your MDiv in 3.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
So
sir.
7 years of college.
It's a long time.
Sam has 10 years of college.
At least. Listen, I really wanted
10
to.
years
I really
to
wanted
get his
to dig in.
bachelor's.
You want to make sure you understood
Yeah,
what was happening.
Why
All
would
right.
I rush through this? Okay, this is a calling,
That's
and
a
I
good point.
needed to spend some
You
time,
make sure you spend time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
educate myself,
There's
and know what I wanted.
17 years to college between the two of you. And then
Listen, would most people have their doctorate? Yes.
and then
That's
three
okay.
and then three and
But
a half.
you really have your bachelor. You can really have it.
Oh, I
You-
have a lot.
Yeah.
A
and
lot.
then I got my bachelor's in 3.5.
Yes.
There you go.
So
okay.
So there you go.
It's a lot. That's 20
all-
years.
20 years
We
of
got
college
20 years of
education.
college right here.
There you go.
I love that.
All
So,
right.
anyways,
So here's my first take
yes,
at this
question.
question.
Yep.
And then Tyler can correct me because he's the only scholar on the chairs. So a couple clues from scripture as to why Jesus would try to keep it hush
yeah,
about him being the Messiah. First is just a real practical one, and you can read it in Mark chapter 1, verses 44 and 45. And this is the time where he says, "Don't tell anyone about this. Instead, go to the priest, let him examine you, take along the offering required for the law of Moses for those who have been healed of leprosy. This will be a public testimony that you have been cleansed." But the man went, spread the word, proclaiming to everyone what had happened. And as a result, large crowds soon surrounded Jesus, and he couldn't publicly enter a town anywhere. He had to stay out of into the secluded areas, but people from everywhere kept coming to him. So from a practical standpoint, if the word gets out about Jesus too fast, it hinders his public ministry.
right.
So Jesus had an incredible sense of calling and timing. And so like as you follow the public ministry of Jesus, you just kind of see like there's definitely momentum that builds as he goes. And then the final push towards the city of Jerusalem, which is where he knows, like prophetically, this is where all of the events of his crucifixion need to happen and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
the Palm Sunday, all that.
Yeah, all that has to happen, and it has to happen in Jerusalem.
So it was the first crowd control.
The first is just really kind of crowd control.
Yeah.
That really is the reason. And it's also interesting to note that he didn't always tell people not to tell someone. So there was the other time that there was the guy who was healed of a bunch of demon possession, and the guy says, "I want to go with you. I want to follow you." And Jesus says, "No, you stay here and tell everyone what I've done for you," basically. And that guy went and became a missionary to those towns. And so Jesus didn't always say to keep it to yourself, but he did on several occasions. And one of the reasons was crowd control. And then the other was in John 6:14 and 15, after Jesus fed the 5,000, we read that when the people saw him do the miraculous sign, they exclaimed, "Surely he's the prophet we've been expecting." And when Jesus saw that they were ready to force him to be their king, he slipped away into the hills by himself. So that goes to the piece of timing. He didn't want to be forcefully crowned king of Jews. He had to fulfill the prophecy that he came to fulfill.
Right.
And so sometimes he would try to keep it on the down low a little bit just so he could fulfill all the things that he needed to do in his public ministry.
Yeah. That's
Man,
good.
Jamie, you crushed those questions. I mean, that's it.
Wow.
That's
Not
From somebody to say that with an endiv,
that's
right?
That's exactly what I would say. That's it. Well,
that's high praise.
that's it. Appreciate that. But even something that may not be, I think it's clear, but it's not maybe not explicitly said for why he would do this, is Jesus is empowering his disciples to spread
Oh, yeah.
I like that.
the word, the kingdom.
Yeah.
He sends them out on mission trips. He
does.
lets them go do that. And I think this kind of plays into that, giving them not the responsibility, but just allowing them to come alongside him in ministry to do what he's calling them to do.
Yeah.
Because even like the question says, I thought Jesus wanted to spread the good news. I would argue that he did.
Yeah.
He did the work empowering his disciples to see what he did, and then they were empowered after seeing his resurrection to take it to the world, and they did. Like every continent has heard of the name of Jesus. Started all the way in the Middle East, so it has spread. He just chose to allow us to come alongside him and be his vehicles to spread.
That's really good.
Yeah.
The word.
Excellent.
I have a few others, but with my 10 years of study,
Yeah.
I think you guys did.
I mean-
You guys did pretty good there.
Okay, thank you.
appreciate
Yeah, we'll allow
Appreciate
it. We'll
that.
move on to the
Yeah.
next segment, and it's called What the What?
That was good.
That was
good.
better, right?
I liked it. I
That's
liked
better
that.
than that annoying sound.
It kept me.
What the what?
I was baited.
Yeah, it kind of draws you in a little
Bated
bit.
breath.
Yeah. So, anyways, we're gonna do that. Hey, from April 9th message, Jamie, when you were discussing your stump sermon.
No. Stump speech
Okay.
of Jesus.
Yes.
Which was, April 9th, that was Easter, wasn't it?
It
Yes.
was.
Yeah. So
Not to be confused with your
mutilated stump.
mutilated stump that you talked about this week.
Correct.
Of course. Why wouldn't you?
Well, it wasn't me. It was Dallas Willard.
I get it,
And
yeah.
he's a brilliant guy. He
is.
I
Yeah.
built him up as like this high scholar, and then he starts talking about mutilated stumps,
Yeah.
which doesn't sound very scholarly.
No, it doesn't. But it definitely gets your attention.
For sure.
We're going to get that later. This
Yeah.
is back to the Easter
Yeah.
message, okay?
Yep.
So you were, when Jesus gave his Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5:6 says, God blesses those who hunger and thirst for justice, for they will be satisfied. This is where the question comes from Scott. Scott, thank you for this because it's very good. This passage lends itself to believe that followers will be satisfied if they thirst for justice. Yet there seems to be injustice every time we turn around, you turn on the TV, anything, right? I've done this most of my life, sought truth and justice in life scenarios, and I'm left dissatisfied every time. Is it realistic to expect this from leaders, elected officials, that they will exercise their authority and make wrongs right on this side of heaven? At times it feels hopeless and not possible given current cultural norms. Thanks for considering this question. I appreciate you guys more than you know. Blessings, Scott. Go ahead, guys.
Well, I'm going to let Tyler take the lead on this, but I will inject one thing before I turn it over to you to
Take the lead.
take the lead and definitively answer this question.
Oh my gosh.
But I think the part where he said, is it realistic to expect this from leaders and elected officials? The answer to that is 100% no. So Jesus is not saying if you hunger and thirst for righteousness or justice, that you will find that in someone else. And that's what that question seems to be indicating. Is it realistic to expect this from others? No. This is about us and our pursuit of justice and righteousness. Depends on the translation.
Yeah, that's good.
No, and I would definitely agree with that. Expecting that from people who are just as sinful as us is just never gonna.
Right.
It's always gonna end up in that. Well, maybe not always, but the expectation to put that expectation on someone who's just a human is just. It's not gonna. It might not bear out, but I love this question because it leaves you with bated breath, and I think of Habakkuk. Because he asked God those same questions. God, I see this stuff happening. I don't see you moving. What's happening? Why aren't you being who you say you are, this perfect judge? And God answers him, maybe not in the way that he would expect. But I think what we can miss, especially in the West, and what I love about talking to this same question to people who aren't in the Western world. So people, China, Asia, Africa, people who, I don't want to say that we're not oppressed in America, but like people who are living under dictatorships, people who are living in that kind of world,
right?
They want true justice, and they see incredible evil, and to know that a God is not going to let that evil just slide by is incredibly impactful. To know that one day, might not be today, tomorrow, next year, but one day that will be answered fully. That justice will come. And so,
he said, Scott says this, which I thought about a couple times because he said he's done this most of his life. He sought truth and justice in life scenarios, and he's left dissatisfied. And he put every time. And the every time kind of caught me because I was like, I think if we dug in a little bit, I think we could see God working in certain ways that maybe it's not just every time it just didn't work out or it hasn't went the way that I've wanted, like quicker, faster. God, show up. I want you to show up in this thing. But maybe there's little things where he does show up, and I think that changes my view a little bit of it.
Yeah.
Instead of it being like every time, no, I'm dissatisfied. It doesn't work out that way.
Yeah, well, I think too, like a hunger for justice. Even if you're dissatisfied in the moment with the amount of justice, a hunger for justice is a hunger for God. God is justice. So
Right.
like even a sense of an awareness of injustice to me is an indication that God is at work in your heart and in your life, because the closer you are to God, the more you will hunger to see justice
Yeah, that's good.
played out. So the fact that you're hungry for it and feeling dissatisfied around it, to me, is an indicator that God is at work in you and drawing you to himself. But ultimately, I think ultimately the answer is, on this side of heaven, it's not going to be completely lived out. And that's kind of what you were saying too, Tyler, it's this future idea. And we read about this in 2 Peter 3, starting in verse 11. It says, since everything around us is going to be destroyed, what holy and godly lives you should live, looking forward to the day of God and hurrying it along. And on that day, he will set the heavens on fire and the elements will melt away in the flames. But we are looking forward to the new heavens and the new earth that he has promised, a world filled with God's righteousness. And it's so that it is kind of that recreation moment that ultimately the hunger for justice and righteousness is satisfied.
Yeah, I love it. And that's where our expectations should rest. Not on officials, not on, not on these earthly things. Like our expectations should be off of that passage.
Yeah.
And I think that's really good. We continued the series this week, What If Jesus Was Serious? Listen, Heather writes these up and she does a great job.
She does.
So shout out to Heather. She doesn't get a lot of praise on here all the time. So I just want to say that.
There you go.
That being said, I think she's setting me up. She knew I was hosting, and she has put paragraph-sized things on here that I got to read.
It's a lot of intro.
And I know she puts in like big words. She's messing with me, and I know that. And I need everybody else to know that too. But yeah, we're in week 3 of our What If Jesus Was Serious series, where we're looking at the Sermon on the Mount. We talked about that through the book written by Sky. This is what I don't want to disrespect him. How do you say his last name?
Jathani.
Yeah, I would never have said it that way, but I love that.
said on Easter Sunday in the run-through, Jathani,
Yeah.
and Heather corrected me,
Oh,
which I was grateful for because I didn't want to publicly say his name incorrectly, but it is Jathani.
Jathani, which he has the same title book as the series we're doing. So
He
if you want to
does.
look it up.
He's also, if you want to listen to him some, he's on the Holy Post podcast.
Oh, that's great.
And it's a great podcast. It's the guy who started VeggieTales.
That's right.
So good.
That's
right,
his podcast. And Sky Jitani is the co-host on that podcast. It's a great podcast.
I just heard recently VeggieTales is putting out new episodes.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And there was this whole thing about VeggieTales. You're going to get me off track here.
sorry.
That's okay. So they never did stories with Jesus because they didn't want Jesus to be
A vegetable.
a vegetable.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So
What
I don't know if
vegetable-
they're gonna. I don't know if they figured out a way to do
What
it.
vegetable would you make Jesus?
That we've
geez.
talked about this for a while. I'm not 100% sure.
I mean,
And I'm not sure we want to go down this road, but maybe write us in. What vegetable would Jesus be on
send us an
VeggieTales?
email at madeformondays@believerschurch.org. If you were in charge, what vegetable would Jesus be?
I love that. Yeah, we'll
Wow.
bring it up later.
I would
What a
love.
question.
I would love to
So-
hear the answers to that.
Yeah, so Jamie, you've been recapping the idea behind the book in this series, saying the curious thing about the Sermon on the Mount is that those who say they love Jesus, they don't seem to take these teachings all that serious.
Yeah.
So it takes the most famous teaching of Jesus, but also they seem to be the most ignored words of Jesus. Last name again?
Jitani.
Yep. In the book says the way people treat these teachings makes him think that while Jesus was teaching, he kept looking over his shoulders at the disciples and winking like,
Yeah.
did he really mean that? Like,
Just
I'm getting
kidding,
them, guys.
Just kidding, guys.
The versions of ourselves we want to be, like our IKEA veneer, is different than the person we really are, Christ followers or not. How does acknowledging that about ourselves help us receive this part of the Sermon on the Mount?
The Satma.
Yep.
SOTM.
I had to
That's what it
Google that to
says.
see what that meant. SOTM. I was like,
SOTM.
what does that mean?
Sermon on the Mount.
Yeah. I felt pretty proud of myself when I figured that out.
That was really good. I'm glad you didn't just
I deciphered
read that.
it.
Satma.
Yep.
Yeah.
Part of the Satma.
So how does acknowledging that about ourselves help us receive this part of the Sermon on the Mount?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think until we're honest about who we are and where we are, we can't really expect to receive, any truth from Scripture. So like there requires a certain amount of transparency and self-awareness to allow God to sift us, shape us. And if he's going to teach something that's going to impact us, we have to open ourselves to that teaching. And so I think just acknowledging like what Jesus is getting at in these verses that we looked at this week, and acknowledging that there is a difference between, the written law and the heart of the law, what we do externally and who we are internally, which is really what Jesus is getting at. Until we acknowledge that there is a discrepancy between those two things, even in ourselves, then we're not going to really see who we are before God, and we're not going to be able to ask even the Holy Spirit to empower us to live out the teachings of Jesus if we kind of wall off that part of ourselves from exposure to the Spirit.
Right.
I think that gets to it.
Yeah, I agree. Tyler, anything to add to that?
Definitely, man. When I read this question, I immediately went to 2 Corinthians 12, like that whole 1 to 10, where Paul talks about the thorn in the flesh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In the end, he says, this is verse 10, he says, that's why I take pleasure in my weaknesses and in the insults and hardships and persecutions and troubles that I suffer for Christ. For when I'm weak, then I am strong. And he's not saying that is his strength, but he's saying when he acknowledges his own weaknesses, then you really see the strength of Christ come through. And like you said, Jamie, if we don't really acknowledge who we actually are, there's no room for growth. There's no room for Christ to come into that if we're already full with ourselves.
Yeah.
So remind us a little bit, like Jesus teaching this on a mount. So who's the audience here? Like, what's the context around just all of this that's happening, that's taking place with the Sermon on the Mount?
Well, I mean, it's like the first week on Easter, we talked a little bit about it. It's there's just crowds of people. The context, though, they're Jewish people, so they're familiar with the Jewish law, and that's this section that Jesus is in. He's going through different laws, and he's saying, "You've heard it said," and he'll quote the law, and they all would have been familiar with that because of their upbringing. Even those who are not religious leaders, they're religious people, and culturally they were very religious people, and so they would have been familiar. And there's always religious leaders everywhere Jesus is that are listening in, trying to find fault with what he's saying. But the rank and file people there are just Jewish religious people who are familiar with the law, and Jesus is presenting, "You've heard it said," and then what he really does is he just kind of goes a little bit deeper. Like, here's what the law says, but here's the intent of this law.
Right.
And it's definitely more profound than what's on the surface.
Yeah, so everybody knew the law. Like, you had to know the law.
Everyone would have known
You had
the
to
law.
know. You had to know it. So Jesus is taking it up a notch, and he's really going after the heart of the law.
Correct.
So how does the condition of our hearts towards others affect the relationship we have with God? That's a great question.
Yeah, so the first "you've heard it said" that Jesus addresses that we did this week was "you shall not murder." That was the law, and then underneath that is he says, "But I say, don't even be angry with someone, don't curse someone, don't call someone an idiot. If you do those things, you're guilty of murder." And so what he's doing is he is linking these two things. Our relationship with people is what our relationship with God is. And this is one of my favorite themes. I love talking about this because I think it's so overlooked in most of our theology, our understanding of who God is. We overlook this, and there's a lot of people. I've known lots of people who would say, "I love God with everything in me," and they are some of the meanest, nastiest people you've ever met.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's no way that person may be self-deceived thinking they love God, but according to Jesus, according to what he said here, how you love God is how you love people. So if you have conflict and unresolved anger and tension with someone else, it hinders your ability to relate to God. That's why he says, drop what you're doing. Don't even bother going into the temple. Don't bother bringing your sacrifice. The sacrifice is a way to atone for sins, to be made right with God. In our context, it would be our confession of sin.
Right.
Don't even bother playing with the confession of sin if you're unwilling to do the work of being reconciled relationally with somebody else. If you are unwilling to do the hard work of living at peace with people, you can't expect to live at peace with God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you experience God, you should see a change in your life of how you treat others.
Of how you treat others.
If you're not seeing that, I would maybe argue against, have you really experienced God?
100%.
And that's hard. I mean, that's a hard
It's a
truth.
hard conversation.
But I put it through. That's the filter I put it through for my life all the time. Still following Jesus for a long time now. Like, I still put that through there. If I'm seeing things in a season of life that I'm in that I'm not really treating people well, if it's driving, like Jamie's been bringing up the driving thing for a while now. It's really been bugging me.
Same.
But I've noticed that, like, I don't treat people very well when I drive. Like,
that's
do
why I
not.
bring it up, because it's where people give themselves permission. They close the car door and they feel like Jesus is outside the car.
Yeah, I got into a little bit of a keyboard fight with a guy for I play PGA Tour on Xbox.
There we go.
And I'm on a Facebook group with it. It's a whole thing. But like, I was something about the game, but I realized in some, like, I wasn't being mean, but like the things I was saying weren't like, they just weren't like super nice. Like, they weren't nice. I don't know how to explain that. It's not as bad as I'm making it sound.
Yeah.
But it was like this argument about the game. But even in that, I was like, it's kind of like the driving thing. It's like, I'm not treating people.
Yeah.
And you got to put it through that filter. Even if you follow Jesus for a long time, if you're seeing things that aren't changing, you're not experiencing God right now.
Correct. Yeah, 100%, man. And what I don't like to do is to reflect and go back and say, okay, I did this. Does that reflect the heart of Jesus? And if it doesn't, then going to do something different or change.
Correct.
No one likes that. And that's why I thank God that he gives us the strength to do what we're doing. And it does get difficult. It is hard. Like when you're in the car, on the basketball court,
right,
whatever it is.
Softball field.
To walk with Jesus and to represent him, letting him live through you, man. Right. And get into the heart of the issue. Because I love what you talked about last Sunday was just behaviors are not, you can change behaviors all day.
Yeah.
Does not change the heart. And out of the heart is where all the mess actually comes.
Where it flows from.
Yep.
So the big idea this week was pay more attention to who you are than what you do.
Oh, there we go.
I know this is something we all need to work on, so I'm curious, how does this challenge affect you guys personally? We kind of got into that a little bit. Is it something you struggle with? What are some ways you put paying attention to who you are into practice? But can you break down that big idea real quick too, Jamie, just to make sure that we understand what you're saying through that?
Because what you do obviously does matter.
Yes.
Right. I mean, obviously it matters. But as Tyler was just saying, if you just focus on behavior modification, just focus on what it is that you're doing. I mean, Rick Warren used to give the illustration of like a speedboat that had like navigation on it, and the boat goes in a certain direction because it's programmed to go in this direction. And you could grab the wheel and turn it and force the boat to go in a different direction. But as soon as you let go of the wheel, it's going to go right back to where it was, which I think is a great illustration of that principle. Behavior modification, you can do the hard work to change your behaviors, and you can do the hard work of establishing new habits. I mean, we did a series at the beginning of the year called, it was based on the book Atomic Habits. And there's a lot of psychology and a lot written about that, and it's not necessarily spiritual Christian content, but there's power in these habits that we can develop. So you can spend a lot of time trying to develop these things. But it's not addressing what's underneath those behaviors. And what's underneath the behaviors, as Tyler just mentioned, is the heart. It's from the heart comes all of these things that derail people. And we watch it unfold in front of us all over the place in popular culture, where people are being derailed by their external behaviors. And it's not who they are, they say,
Right.
but it is who they are. It just, it came out. And that's what happens. And, when we have moments of rage and something comes out of you, you say, man, where did that come from? Well, it came from inside of you. It is part of who you are. You just normally keep it suppressed.
And I think sometimes people don't I know sometimes I don't even realize that, like, wow, I didn't know that was in my heart.
Exactly.
I didn't know I felt that. Like, I didn't know that. Like, a
Yes.
brain can trick you into forgetting what your heart's actually feeling until those moments come out like that.
Right. So the big idea is focus more on who you are. Pay attention to who you are becoming. And then you don't have to work as hard on what you're doing, because who you're becoming will naturally bleed into what you are doing. So if you can develop those practices and those habits of allowing God to do a deeper work inside of you to change who you are on the inside,
Yeah.
then who we are externally starts to match up, and we become people of integrity. And integrity is just who you portray yourself to be and who you are the same. That's what integrity is. And
So what are some good ways to figure that out,
Yeah.
to know where you're at, to know who you are?
So one of the best ways is how I closed the message yesterday. And I made a special point of talking about why I closed the service the way that I do. And I do it almost every week. But the reason I do is because we do very little of it. And that is just reflection.
Yep.
Self-reflection. I'm in a call group with a handful of pastors that are part of the Irresistible Church Network. And we're going through the Emotionally Healthy Spirituality course together. And today was the first day. So I've read the book. The book I thought was just okay, but now I'm going through it as the whole course, right? So there's two readings per day, one in the morning, one in the evening, and you're supposed to start your reading. It's a scripture reading and then a prayer, and you're supposed to start it with 2 minutes of silence, and then you go through it, answer a couple questions, and then you end with 2 minutes of silence. So I have Google set my timer for 2 minutes, and I'm like, I check the timer after what feels like, gosh, is the timer even working?
Something's broke.
Yes, I think maybe it broke. It's got to be 5 minutes now, and I still had 30 seconds left. It had been 90 seconds.
Yep.
And I think that shows like we're in a hurry all the time. We do not take time to reflect.
No.
And one of the surest ways to know who you are on the inside is to be quiet before God, speak the name of Jesus, pray a prayer. I think it was a prayer of Moses, search me, O God, and see if there be any wicked way in me, and
then
just
be
be
quiet.
quiet
Yeah.
for minutes at a time before God, allowing him. And when your brain starts to get you sidetracked and distracted, you just say the prayer again and refocus your thoughts and be quiet before God and allow him to search you. It's a difficult discipline, especially in our culture that is constant noise.
Constant noise. Yeah.
Right.
But I think the whole resilient thing with the pause app and all those things, like, I did it for a little while, I did it for a few months, and then I've kind of gotten away from it because it's hard to sit still for
Same.
10 minutes at a
agree.
time,
Yeah.
morning and evening.
Yep.
And yet,
And it sounds so ridiculous.
it
'cause you're like,
sounds so
no.
ridiculous.
But it is so
It's so
difficult.
difficult.
It's hard to do, and yet I do believe that is one of the disciplines that is key to being transformed internally.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons I think that, like, spiritually, we're just and it's not an accusation, it's just an observation. I think generally speaking, we are spiritually very shallow people,
Yeah.
and part of it is we are unable to be quiet before God.
Yeah.
I agree
No,
with
that's
that.
good.
There's
It is.
two things that make time go so slow. One is being quiet before God and doing planks.
Doing a plank, time stops.
It's just like
It just
doesn't move.
it doesn't move.
It's
But,
unbelievable. Tyler, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. So, man, I love the way Jamie frames that, and I definitely struggle with that reflection, wanting to just sit and be before God. But even maybe a little deeper, not deeper. Another side of that I could share is, for me, maybe other people can agree to this. When I look at my actions, I look at what I'm doing, I try to pay attention to that, all that. What I end up falling into is when I am doing quote unquote good, doing my spiritual disciplines, doing the whatever the thing is that's quote unquote good, my heart says God is more pleased with me now
100%.
than he was when I wasn't doing that.
Right.
And so then I get so wrapped up in the actions that I just forget that, no, God, he just loves you all through it. Like, Jesus demonstrates his love towards you. And so you can just rest in that.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to the same thing, letting that peace be what flows out of you. But yeah, I know that people struggle with that too.
Yeah.
Getting to that whole,
100% they do.
yeah.
So
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, this transformation process, it's not in order to have God love us more,
100%.
right? That's kind of
Yeah.
what you're hitting at. Yeah, so, if you've got a thin veneer and the junk keeps coming out, God loves you.
Yes.
And his righteousness is your righteousness. So, your merit, your goodness comes from him. It's not from this, transformation process. However, he's called us to be these kinds of people. So in our pursuit of, because he loves us and we love him because he first loved us, because of our love for him, we're in pursuit of him. And that does naturally lead to, it ought to lead to transformation.
Yeah, if you're pursuing something, you should be getting closer to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not further away
100%.
from it.
Yeah,
You know?
it's the fruit of the root, that
Right.
that Jesus hits on quite a bit in the Sermon on the Mount. Like, you can tell what's going on in a person based on the fruit, based on the evidence. And if we are in relationship with Jesus, life flows from that relationship.
Yeah.
So we already started talking about a little bit about this, but we said that, or Jamie, you said yesterday that you would talk a little bit more about this on the podcast. So you wrapped up the message with 3 things that we can do to guard our hearts. The first one would be connection with the Father.
Yep.
Do you have anything? We've kind of added to that, like how you can connect to the Father, but any other thoughts you had on that necessarily?
Yeah. Well, I'll just kind of all 3 of them kind of tie together. So
it was connection with the Father, monitoring your intake, and then the time you spend with Jesus, intake time that you spent with Jesus.
Yeah. So I think all 3 of those are kind of tied together. They all work with one another. The illustration that I gave about the connection was about proximity. And so I used the illustration of the router. Yep. And the closer you are to the router, the stronger the signal, right? So the further in my house, in the apartment side of my house, the Wi-Fi signal drops off. So the closer you get to the router, to the Father, the stronger the signal. And I just think that's partly what this is all about. It's about increasing our proximity to the Father. And as we do that through the disciplines, but also, just through our activities, decreasing the amount of intake of content that works against our connection with the Father. And that could be media, it could be books, it could be the things that we spend a lot of time thinking about, whatever those things are. I think we intuitively know.
The Holy Spirit lets you.
I think so,
yes.
Right? So George Murray, one of my early mentors in ministry, he spoke at Believers a couple of times, and there was a friend of mine I mean, the first time that George spoke at Believers, it had to be 15, 17, 18 years ago. It was a long time ago. And he said something when he came that a friend of mine still will say, man, I'll never forget when George Murray said, and he said, the gist of it was, avoid anything that does not contribute to your sanctification as a believer, basically. So everything you do either contributes to your sanctification, your process of becoming more like Jesus, or it takes away from your sanctification, the process of you becoming more like Jesus. And if we're really committed to becoming and pursuing Jesus, then we want to avoid those things that work against our sanctification.
Right.
And I mean, honestly, we all get a little, I know I do, all get a little lax in what those things that we allow in our hearts and in our lives that ultimately are hollowing us out spiritually. And I guess it requires commitment, but it's really not all that complicated.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. And as you wrapped up, I was watching from the James room. I was setting up for Discovery X, but I think what people can get wrapped up into, because I know I definitely do, is if I'm not sitting at the table with my Bible out, doing it this specific way, then I'm missing something.
Right.
Like you said, it's really like a lifestyle move. And
it is.
What we've, even in our B group, what we talked about is different ways to spend time with God, to worship, because worship's more than singing. So I appreciate you, Sam, always moving to saying we are praising God through song, not worship. Like trying to create that difference.
Worship time is not just when we sing.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So like when I'm out fishing,
100%.
Enjoying God's creation,
Act of worship.
looking at what it is an act of worship. Whether you like going to the park or do whatever you can do to connect with God in a way that means something to you. It doesn't, doing spiritual disciplines, reading your Bible, praying, those are needed and great, but we don't have to be dogmatic about like the methodology of enjoying time with God.
Dallas Willard, he talked about having an awareness or a consciousness of God's presence and trying to maintain that throughout your day. And like just that, like whatever activities that you're engaged in, but with an awareness and a consciousness of God's presence with you. My guess is that would hinder some of those things that hollow us out on the inside. If I'm aware of God's presence with me, I might avoid certain things because God is with me in this moment.
Yep.
But that's how he kind of defined this this oneness with the Father, is this conscious awareness of the Father. And John Ortberg, who was a big disciple of Willard and has written quite a few books based on Willard's teachings, he has kind of written about that and this idea of how many minutes can I actually sustain the conscious awareness of God in my day. And the longer I can do that, the more mature I'm becoming in my faith.
Yep.
I just love that idea.
Yeah, that is that's a challenge too.
Super challenging.
So, guys, I have enjoyed our conversation today. Thanks for being part of it. That is all the time that we do have. If you're listening or you're watching, make sure you share it on social. Jeremy, our content developer, creator, is doing awesome posting this stuff on social. So make sure you share that stuff out, and we'll be able to keep growing this thing, because obviously Pastor Jamie wants to make all of the monetary.
Hey, if we can monetize this thing effectively, it allows us to do more ministry. I'm not talking about me.
Oh, you don't want to make money.
I'm not personally going to make money off of this
Well, that's
thing.
good to clarify.
Yeah, no, I think this, like, if we could monetize this thing, it could go into ministry, into reaching our community.
I love that.
Right?
100%.
We should have said that at the beginning too, because nobody's listening at this point. But anyways, if you are listening, make sure you come on Sunday, 10:45. We'll continue our series. But thanks for being here, friends. I don't say friends ever, but thanks for being here, and go be love.